And Nathaniel Raymond, the executive director of the Humanitarian Research Lab at Yale School of Public Health. He joins us live from New Haven, Connecticut. Always good to see you, Nathaniel. What's your sense now of how the war in Sudan is going? Is the military able to maintain some kind of momentum now against the RSF?
The events of the last month have really turned on its head the trajectory of the war since the fall of al-Fashir to rapid support forces at the end of October and beginning of November. What's happened in the past week, as your correspondent Abdullah Hussein mentioned, is that the Sudan Armed Forces have finally deployed their maneuver capability to recapture two of the three critical cities, what we call the spine of Kordofan. Delenge, Kadugli, and now El Obeid is still under their control. What we're going to see now that the SAF forces are on the road and have the initiative is a decision point about whether they hold near El Obeid and Baba Nusa or they decide to press on to Darfur towards Nyala or al-Fashir, putting those cities under siege during the remainder of the dry season, which has 12 weeks at least more to go.
So what's going to be the deciding factor here in terms of how the war develops from this point on?
It really comes down to supply lines. The big event of the past 3 weeks to month is that for the first time, the United Arab Emirates underwritten supply lines by air have been disrupted through political action by Egypt, Somalia, and Libya and other states that have denied air access to the critical resupply that RSF needs for munitions and for materials such as the suicide drones that you heard in the broadcast from Sudan. The real takeaway from this past month of air flight disruption for the RSF is it's revealed shockingly how fragile they are. And so if they can't regain both those supply lines, and also if their non-Rezaget, non-Darfur local allies, the SPLM North, the Al-Hilu faction, and the Misriya in the southern area of the Kordofans from Muglad to Abyei, if those forces lose trust in RSF and leave their side, RSF will be in deep trouble.
So, you know, I hate to say it, but it almost seems like you have some sort of optimism here at this point. But Nathaniel, you've spoken so many times about the suffering of the civilians population there in Sudan. Do you feel that, you know, the tide might be turning for them as well?
Well, that's the critical thing we need to talk about, which is we have two threats right now if SAF is taking the advantage. One is while SAF is not engaged in the genocidal level of killing that RSF has in al-Fashir and El Geneina, they have engaged in ethnically motivated reprisal attacks, including, as we documented with CNN, against the Kanabi and Al Jazeera and elsewhere in Sudan, and they could do so in Kadugli against the Nuba. So we need to watch very closely now that SAF victory doesn't also mean that they engage in reprisal killings, particularly against civilians in the Kata Valley. The second is that victory by SAF alone does not alleviate the incredible obstacles to effective and equitable humanitarian delivery, particularly in places like the Kata Valley in Kordofan, where civilians there have been in a state of high food insecurity for years, including bombardment by SAF with barrel bombs on their agricultural production locations, such as orchards and fields. So we need to be hopeful that RSF's march towards Khartoum and Omdurman has been slowed or perhaps reversed, but we also need to not be blind to the potential for SAF abuses, both in terms of killings and continued blockage of aid to certain ethnic groups.
All right, Nathaniel Raymond, thank you so much for your time and analysis here on the program.